The road back to Dust Creek was dry and lonely. Wind pushed dust into my face and eyes. I kept walking, one step after another. My boots were torn, my dress thin and old. I carried my mother's satchel and her last letter. It smelled like rain and firelight, her smell. When the town came into view, I stopped. The wooden sign said, "Welcome to Dust Creek." I whispered, "Home," but not really home. A wagon passed, and a man spat near me. He said, "Ain't that the widow's girl?" I didn't answer. I kept walking. The saloon doors creaked as I passed. A woman laughed inside, sharp like glass. I looked away and walked toward the hills. I needed work, and I needed quiet. Martha's ranch sat on the edge of town. She was my mother's old friend, or used to be. When I reached the gate, I called out, "Martha, it's Lila Hensley." The door opened, and she stepped out. Gray hair pulled back, hands on her hips. "Lord, child," she said, "you look like the wind itself." I said, "I came to work." "I can cook, clean, help." She nodded slowly. "Then come in. God knows I need it." Inside, the kitchen smelled of bread and smoke. I warmed my hands near the fire. Martha poured me coffee and said, "Your mama was a good woman." I said, "I know." "She died in peace," Martha sighed. "Peace ain't cheap in this town." I looked around. Walls lined with pans, a table, 2 chairs, a cat asleep near Boots. "This place feels safe," I said quietly. Martha laughed. "Safe? You'll learn quick." She pointed toward the window. "Storm's coming." I turned and saw dark clouds over the fields. Later, I took a small room upstairs. The bed was hard, but it was mine. I read my mother's letter again by candlelight. "Lila, don't fear the world. Heal where I couldn't." Her words burned softly in my chest. Thunder rolled outside. The wind grew wild. I went to close the shutters when I saw it. A man stumbling through the rain toward the gate. He fell face first in the mud. "God!" I whispered and ran downstairs. Martha shouted, "Leave him, Lila." "It's trouble." I said, "He'll die if I don't help." She shook her head. "Trouble don't die easy." I ignored her and ran into the storm. Rain hit hard, cold as knives. I knelt beside the man and turned him over. Blood ran from his shoulder, dark and thick. "Sir, can you hear me?" I said loudly. He groaned and grabbed my wrist weakly. "Don't tell—" "The sheriff," he whispered. His face was rough, beard soaked with rain. I said, "You need help or you'll bleed out." He said, "No, doctor." "Just patch it." Lightning flashed. I saw a gun near his belt. Fear gripped me, but I couldn't walk away. I dragged him to the porch with all my strength. Martha met me at the door, angry but scared. "Lord save us, girl," she muttered. "Bring him in." We laid him on the table by the fire. His boots were muddy, his hat torn. He groaned as I cut his sleeve open. Martha said, "You sure you can do this?" I said, "I learned enough to stop blood." She handed me a bottle of whiskey and rags. "Then stop talking and start saving him," she said. I cleaned the wound, pressing hard until he yelled. He glared at me with pain in his eyes. "You stitching or killing me?" he growled. I said, "Maybe both if you keep talking." Martha laughed once, then covered her mouth. When it was done, I tied the bandage tight. He lay there breathing heavy, eyes half open. "What's your name?" I asked softly. He said, Ethan Cole." I said, "You safe here now, Ethan?" He gave a bitter smile. "Nobody's safe anywhere." The rain eased outside, slow and tired. Martha brought a blanket and tossed it on him. She whispered to me, "You'll regret this, Lila." I said, "Maybe, but he's alive." Ethan's eyes followed me as I stood. "You should have left me out there," he said. I said, "My mama raised me better." He closed his eyes and muttered, "Then she raised a fool." I didn't answer. I just watched the fire burn low. When Martha went to bed, I stayed near him. His breath came rough but steady now. I touched my mother's letter in my pocket. Her words echoed in my head, heal where I couldn't. The wind outside softened. The cat purred by the hearth. Ethan shifted and said, "You ain't afraid, are you?" I said, "I've already lost everything once." He turned his head slightly, pain in his eyes. "Then maybe we're both ghosts," he whispered. I looked at him and said, "Maybe ghosts can help each other." He didn't answer. Sleep took him. I stared into the fire until dawn broke. The light touched his face, scarred, tired, human. I whispered. Dust Creek just got complicated. He opened his eyes when I brought water. Doctor? I asked softly. He shook his head. No, doctor. Too costly, I said. You'll bleed to death. He smiled weakly. Then it's a cheap end. I stared at his pale face. You can't die here, I said. Then help me, healer, he whispered. I'm no healer, I lied. He closed his eyes. Then pretend. I boiled water, cleaned my hands, and stitched his wound. He gritted his teeth but didn't scream. When I finished, he looked at me. You've done this before, he said. I looked away. Once or twice. He smiled faintly. You lie smooth as silk, I said, and you bleed like a fool. He laughed and coughed blood. I pressed the cloth harder. Rest, I said. He murmured, Can't. Not safe. Safe from who? He didn't answer. For 2 days he barely spoke. I kept him alive with broth and prayers. Martha came once, saw the mess and sighed. Girl, he'll bring you trouble, she warned. I said, He already did. She left, shaking her head. On the 3rd night, I heard him talk in sleep. No, Sam, don't go, I whispered. Who's Sam? He woke and glared at me. Don't listen to dreams. I said, Dreams speak truth. He turned his face to the wall. When I cleaned his bandage, I saw a silver locket near his pillow. I asked, She yours? He looked at it once. Used to be. She left? She died, he said simply. Silence filled the small room. I said, I'm sorry. He said, Don't be. Death forgets names. That night the wind howled outside. I brought him soup and bread. He said, You cook better than any doctor. I smiled. Doctors don't feed their patients, he grinned. You call me patient now? I said, You're breathing, aren't you? He laughed again, softer this time. On the 4th day, he tried to stand. I said, Lie down before you fall. He said, I hate lying down. You'll hate dying more, I replied. He smirked. Maybe not. I said, You talk like you want to die. He said, Sometimes death sounds quiet, I whispered. So does forgiveness. He looked at me strangely. Later, as I washed dishes, he spoke again. You ever lose someone? I said, Everyone loses someone. Mother? Husband? My mother, I said. No husband, he nodded. You sound like her. Who? The woman who saved me once, he said. She told me to fight. Did you? I asked. Barely, he said. Still trying. I sat by the lamp, watching his breathing slow. He opened one eye. Why help me? I said, Because I can. That's not reason enough. It is for me, I said. He smiled faintly. Then I owe you. I said, You'll owe me for this. He whispered, Maybe I'll pay with my life. I froze. Don't joke about that. He looked serious. I never joke about death. You talk like you know it. I met it, he said. Didn't shake its hand. Then don't plan to, I said. He chuckled. Bossy woman, I said, a live woman. Keep up. When I left him to sleep, the night was silent. The stars hung cold above the ranch. I leaned on the doorframe, feeling tired but steady. Inside, he muttered again, Don't tell the sheriff. I whispered, I won't. But you'll tell me someday. I watched the lamp fade and the fire die low. He was the man who wouldn't die, and I was the woman foolish enough to keep him alive. The fire cracked and threw soft light on his face. I said, Does it hurt much tonight? Ethan looked at the flames and said, Less than it used to. I smiled a little. You mean your wound or your heart? He gave a dry laugh. Both, I guess. The night outside was quiet. Only the wind spoke. I stirred the soup and asked, You fought in the war, right? He nodded slowly. Yeah, too long. Too far from home. I said, Was it worth it? He said, No war ever is. I passed him a bowl. Eat before it gets cold. He held it in both hands and said, You always take care of others, don't you? I said, It's what my mother taught me. He looked at me then. Tell me about her. I sat near the fire, knees pulled close. She was strong, I said. Too strong for this world. She raised me alone after my father left. Ethan's eyes softened. He left you? I nodded. Said he needed money. Never came back. He said, And that's cruel. I said, Cruel is waiting for someone who doesn't return. He stared into the fire. I know that feeling. You waited too? I asked. For my brother, he said. Sam, we joined the war together. What happened to him? He took a deep breath. He betrayed me. I stayed quiet, letting the fire pop between us. He said, we got paid for guarding a payroll wagon. Big money. He took it and ran. I said, you tried to stop him? He looked at his bandaged arm. He shot me first. My throat closed. You mean your own brother? He nodded. Family doesn't always mean mercy. I said, maybe he was scared. Ethan's eyes hardened. Fear isn't an excuse for betrayal. I said softly, then maybe you never forgave him. He looked at me sharply. Would you? I met his eyes. I had to. He frowned. For who? For my father. If I didn't forgive, I'd rot inside. He went silent for a while. The firelight flickered across his jaw. Finally, he said, I don't believe in second chances. I whispered, then you've never been forgiven. He looked at me like the words hurt worse than his wound. After a long pause, he said, you talk like a preacher. I smiled. No, I just talk like someone who survived. The flames hissed as a log broke apart. I poured more soup into his bowl and said, you should rest. He said, you ever think about leaving this place? I said, every day. He said, so why stay? I stared at the fire, because running doesn't fix the heart. He nodded slowly. You sound older than you are. I laughed quietly. Pain makes you old early. He leaned back against the wall. You remind me of someone. Who? I asked. My mother, he said. She used to talk that way. I said, then she must have been wise. He smiled faintly. She was. She told me, son, forgive quick or die bitter. I said, you didn't listen. He laughed once. No, I didn't. The night grew colder. I added another log. He said, you ever miss him, your father? I thought about it. Some days, yes. Other days, I wish I could forget his face. Ethan said, you can't forget blood. I said, no, but you can live without hate. He turned toward me. You really believe that? I have to, I said. It's the only way I sleep. He rubbed his hand over his beard. You're braver than most folks I know. I said, I'm just tired of being angry. He nodded. Tired is close to brave, I smiled. You say strange things, he grinned. That's what happens when you almost die twice. I said, you count tonight as one? He said, almost. You dragged me back to life. I laughed softly. You weren't that heavy. He said, you don't know how heavy guilt can be. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air smelled like smoke and soup. He said, you ever afraid you'll end up like your father? I said, all the time. But I fight it, I added. Every day, with small kindness. He said, maybe that's what saves people. I said, what? Someone refusing to give up on them. I felt my chest tighten. Maybe I'm doing that for you. He looked down at the fire and said quietly, maybe you are. Outside, coyotes howled across the hills. The fire burned low, orange fading to red. He said, if I ever walk again, I'll fix your roof. I said, I'll hold you to that. He smiled. You would. I stood up. Get some rest, he said. You too, Lila. The way he said my name felt different now, softer. I went to the window and looked at the dark sky. Stars blinked like tiny eyes watching us breathe. I whispered, good night, Ma. I'm still trying. Her voice came back in my head, calm and sure. Don't close your heart yet. I turned toward Ethan. His eyes were closed. The firelight painted his face in peace. For the first time in years, I felt safe enough to dream. The sun sat low when the sheriff came. His horse kicked dust near the fence. Martha called, Lila, man at the gate. I wiped my hands and walked out. Sheriff Boyd tipped his hat. He said, afternoon, Miss Hensley. You alone? I said, no, sir. Ethan's inside resting. His eyes narrowed. So he's still here, I frowned. He's hurt, Sheriff. He needs rest. He said, rest or hiding? My stomach turned cold. What do you mean by that? I asked. He took a paper from his coat. Wanted, it said. Ethan Cole. Assault, theft. I shook my head hard. That can't be him. You're wrong, Boyd sighed. Maybe, but I've seen good men lie. I crossed my arms. You didn't see him bleed, he said. Sometimes guilt bleeds too. The wind carried the smell of rain. He said, "You help him, fine, but be careful." "He's got a trail of ghosts behind him," I said. "He's no killer." He studied my face. "You sound sure," I said, "because I know what fear looks like." And he fears his past, not the law. Boyd nodded slowly. "You talk like his wife," I blushed. "I'm not." "Good," he said. "Then you can still walk away." He rode off, boots clinking against stirrups. I watched until he vanished in dust. Martha came out drying her hands. She said, "What did the lawman want?" I whispered. "He thinks Ethan's wanted." She whistled low. "Well, he ain't the only one hiding things." I looked at her quick. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "That man got storm clouds in his eyes. Somebody broke him bad before you found him." I said, "He saved my life, Martha." She nodded. "And maybe you'll save his." Inside, Ethan sat at the table. He said, "The sheriff's horse sounds heavy." I froze. "You heard him?" He smiled thinly. "Walls talk, Lila." He pointed at the folded paper in my hand. "What did he show you?" I said, "Nothing that changes what I see." He laughed once, bitter. "You sure about that?" I said, "I'm not blind." He said, "You're just kind. And kindness can kill you." I placed the paper down. "Tell me the truth." He leaned back, eyes dark. "Truth costs more than I can pay." I said, "I'm not asking for gold." He whispered, "You're asking for trust," and I ran out. My heart twisted. "Did you do it, Ethan?" He stared hard at the window. "I hurt men before," he said, "but not the way they wrote." "Then why not tell the sheriff?" He looked down. "Because once you're marked guilty, truth don't matter." I reached for his hand. "You're safe here." He pulled away. "No one's safe anywhere." "Please," I said, "don't leave." He stood up fast. "I can't stay and drag you down." His chair fell behind him. Rain began to hit the roof. He grabbed his coat, breath shaking. I said, "You think running fixes guilt?" He stopped at the door. "It fixes losing you." I followed him out into the rain. "Ethan!" I called. He turned, hat dripping water. His face looked carved from stone. He said, "You think I'm guilty too?" My lips parted, but no words came. He nodded once. "That's all I needed." He walked into the storm and vanished down the road. I stood there till the rain softened. Martha came behind me holding a shawl. She wrapped it around my shoulders. Her voice broke the silence. "A man running from ghosts can't chase love," I whispered. "Then why did he run?" She said, "Because he saw his reflection in yours." I looked toward the hills, where the sky burned gray-blue with lightning. Each flash showed the empty road. I felt that same hollow space inside me. It was the same cold I felt the night my father left and never turned back. This time, though, the ache carried someone else's name. I whispered, "Come back, Ethan, please." But the storm took my words away. The morning felt heavy, like the sky forgot to breathe. I folded blankets and saw something under Ethan's coat. A torn envelope stained dark with old blood. My hands shook. I whispered, "What is this?" The paper was soft, words half faded by time. I read slowly, my eyes burning at every line. "Brother, I stole the ranch money. I ran. I'm sorry. If you find this, don't come after me. I can't face you. Forgive me, Sam." I dropped the letter and sat on the floor. The room spun. I pressed my hands over my mouth. "He's not guilty," I said out loud. "He was protecting what's left of his family." Martha's voice came from the doorway. "What's all this talk about family, child?" I showed her the letter. She squinted, then sighed. "So that's the truth, huh? The quiet ones carry the biggest pain." I said, "He never told anyone." She said, "He didn't have to." "He's been paying for it every day." Her eyes softened. "What will you do now?" "I'll write to him," I said. Martha smiled sadly. "You think he can read a letter sent by the wind?" I said, "I just need to say it once." That night, I lit the lamp and opened my mother's notebook. The pages smelled like dust and old rain. I dipped the pen, took a deep breath, and wrote, "Ethan, I know the truth. You're not the man they say you are. You carried blame that wasn't yours. You tried to save what was left. I was afraid. I doubted you. I'm sorry. Come back. You still have a home here. I read it twice." My tears made small spots on the ink. I sealed it, but my hands froze near the envelope. "Will it even reach him?" I whispered. Outside, the wind howled against the window. Martha knocked. "You still awake?" "Yes," I said. "I finished something I'll never send." She came in with 2 cups of warm milk. "Letters like that," she said, "ain't written for others. They're written so the heart can rest." I smiled faintly. "Then maybe I'll rest tonight." We drank in silence for a while. She said, "You're waiting for him, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, even if I shouldn't." She said, "Waiting's fine. Just don't stop living while you do." Her words sank deep. "I'll try," I whispered. The lamp flickered. My thoughts kept talking. Why did I believe the lies about him? Because I'd believed lies before, my father's lies. He said he'd come back. He never did. He said, "Men like me don't change." And I had believed that too. I placed the letter inside my apron pocket. Maybe someday I'd find the courage to send it. For now, it could stay close to my heart. The next morning, the sky broke open with color. The ranch smelled like rain and wood smoke. I went outside to feed the chickens. That's when I saw a man at the gate. A gray coat, tall hat, and eyes I knew too well. My breath caught. "Lila," he said, voice rough. It was my father. I hadn't seen him in 10 years. I said, "You shouldn't be here." He smiled, thin and cold. "Still my girl, huh? Always quick with orders. What do you want?" I asked. "Money," he said plainly. Same as before. Martha came out, hand on her hip. "You got some nerve showing up here," she said. He looked her up and down. "And you got a mouth still," I said. "Leave her out of this." He stepped closer, eyes sharp. "I heard you took in that cowboy. Dangerous man, they say." "He's not what they say." He smirked. "You sound just like your mother." "Good," I said. "She had a better heart than you." His hand twitched near his belt. I stayed still. "If you came for money, you'll leave with nothing." He said, "You owe me." "I gave you life." I said, "You took more than you gave." Martha moved between us. "You heard her. Get off this land." He spat on the dirt. "You'll regret this." Then he turned and walked away, coat flapping like a crow's wing. I stood there shaking. Martha touched my arm. "You did right," she said softly. "He's my father," I whispered. "He was," she said, "but not anymore." I went inside, hands trembling. The envelope was still on the table. I stared at it, thinking of 2 men, one who betrayed blood and one who carried it like a burden. I whispered, "Ethan, please come back." Martha said later, "You need to eat." I said, "I can't." She said, "Then write again." It helps, so I did. I opened a clean page and began another letter. "Dear Ethan, the world here keeps turning. The barn leaks, the wind bites, and I still wait. But I'm not scared anymore. If you ever come back, I'll be here. If you don't, I'll still thank you for showing me I can feel again." When I finished, I folded it slowly. 2 letters now sat on the table side by side, one stained with blood, one clean with hope. I tied them together with string and whispered, "Let the wind decide where they go." Outside, the ranch looked calm, almost kind. The sun slipped through the clouds and touched the fence. I breathed deep and felt lighter. Maybe forgiveness didn't need delivery. Maybe love could live in words never sent. I said aloud, "Come back, Ethan. You still have a home here." The wind carried my voice toward the hills, and for a moment I believed it reached him. I waited by the porch when my father rode in. He looked older, meaner, his hat low, his eyes cold. "Lila," he said, voice rough. "You still helping that killer?" My stomach turned. "What killer?" I asked. He spat dust. "That cowboy, Ethan Cole. He shot his own brother." I froze. "You're lying." He laughed. "You think I'd lie to my own blood?" I whispered. "You lied to Ma before you left." His face darkened. "Don't start with me, girl." I felt anger rise like fire. "Tell me what really happened." He said, "Sam tried to stop him. Ethan pulled the trigger." I shook my head. "No, Ethan wouldn't. Believe what you want," he said. "But that man will ruin you." I said, "You already did that." He slammed his boot on the porch step. "Watch your mouth," I said. "I watched you walk away." That was enough. He turned, grabbed his reins, and rode off fast. I stood there shaking. The wind whispered through the corral fence. I needed truth. I saddled my horse and rode toward town. The road felt long and dry. Dust burned my eyes. At the sheriff's office, I found Boyd cleaning his rifle. He looked up. "Lila, what brings you here?" I said, "My father told me Ethan killed Sam." He frowned. "Who told you that nonsense?" "My father," I said. Boyd sighed. "Your father's been lying for years." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" He said, "Sam Cole died in a robbery near the river." I whispered, "Robbery?" "Your father was there," he added. The room spun around me. "You're sure?" "Sure as my badge," he said. "Ethan tried to save Sam, not kill him." I covered my mouth. "Oh, God." Boyd leaned forward. "Your father blamed Ethan to hide his part," I said. "He told me Ethan ran from the law." Boyd nodded. "He ran from grief, not guilt." Tears burned my eyes. "He's been lying all my life." Boyd said, "Go home, Lila. Tell Ethan what you know." I ran from the office, heart pounding. Rain clouds gathered above the street. I rode back fast, dust and tears mixing on my face. When I reached the ranch, my father was there again. He stood near the barn, his face red with rage. I yelled, "Why did you lie?" He turned slowly. "You talked to Boyd." I said, "He told me the truth." He sneered. "Boyd don't know a damn thing," I shouted. "He said you were there when Sam died." He stepped closer, eyes burning. "You calling me a thief?" "I'm calling you what you are," I said. His hand snapped across my face. The slap echoed like a shot. Pain stung, but anger burned hotter. I whispered, "You'll never hit me again." He raised his hand once more. A voice cut through the wind. "You don't touch her," I turned. Ethan stood behind him, gun drawn, chest bleeding again. His shirt was dark with blood. His face pale. He said, "Put your hands down, Hensley." My father froze. "You should have stayed gone, Cowboy," Ethan coughed. "And let you hurt her?" "Not a chance." I stepped between them. "Stop, both of you." My father growled. "Move, girl," I said. "No." Ethan's voice broke. "She's done paying for your sins." My father's eyes darted to the gun. "You'll shoot me?" Ethan said, "If I have to." The world held its breath. Rain began to fall, cold and heavy. My father looked at me, then at Ethan, his face twisted. "You'll regret this." He dropped his hat and ran toward his horse. Ethan lowered the gun and leaned against the post. Blood dripped down his side. I rushed to him. "You're bleeding again." He said, "I've had worse." I tore a part of my shawl and pressed it to his wound. He winced. "You shouldn't have stood in front of me," I said. "And you shouldn't have walked into a fight bleeding." He gave a weak laugh. "Guess we both made bad choices." I smiled through tears. "Maybe, but you saved me." He looked at me softly. "You're the only reason I came back." Rain washed the blood away from his hand. I whispered, "I know the truth now." He asked, "About your father?" "Yes," I said. "About everything." He nodded slowly. "Truth hurts, doesn't it?" I said, "It heals too." He looked down. "I never wanted you to see me like this." I said, "And I never wanted to see you gone." He smiled faintly. "Then we're even." I helped him inside the barn, laid him on a pile of hay. His eyes closed for a moment. I touched his cheek. "Stay with me, Ethan," he whispered. "As long as you'll have me." I said, "Then you'll never leave." He smiled again. "You sound sure," I said. "I am now." The rain hit the roof harder. Outside, the wind carried my father's hoofbeats away. Inside, only our breathing filled the air. For the first time, I didn't feel afraid. Truth had hurt, but it had set me free. The sky turned black before sunset. I felt the air grow heavy. I said, "A storm's coming, Ethan." He said, "We'll be fine. It's just rain." I shook my head. "It feels wrong." He smiled weakly, holding his side. "You worry too much, Lila," he said. "I learned that from you," I replied. Wind hit the windows hard. The horses screamed from the barn. Ethan tried to stand. I said, "You're still hurt," he said. "They need help." "I'll go." I grabbed his arm. "You can't." He looked at me, eyes soft but stubborn. "I can't sit while they die," he said. I had no choice. I followed him. Rain came fast, sharp like glass. It hit my face and burned. The world turned white with lightning. The barn roof shuddered and cracked. "Move, hurry!" I shouted. We pushed the door open together. The horses kicked and cried. Smoke and rain mixed in the air. Ethan limped toward the far stall. "Take the black mare first," he yelled. I grabbed her rope and pulled. She fought me, wild with fear. Easy, girl. Easy, I said softly. Her eyes rolled, showing white. Lightning struck near the hill. The whole world shook and screamed, "Lila, get out!" Ethan shouted. I saw a beam fall behind him. "Ethan!" I screamed. He pushed the last horse out. Then the beam crashed down. Flames burst along the hay. "Ethan!" I ran to him through smoke. He lay under part of the roof. "Don't move," I said, coughing. "I'm fine," he said. But he wasn't. His shirt soaked red near the wound. "I told you, you're still bleeding." He smiled faintly. "Guess you were right." I pulled on the beam with both hands. It burned, but I didn't stop. "Help me, God, please," I said. The wood shifted, just enough. I dragged him free, knees sinking in mud. The rain killed some fire, but not all. Smoke stung my eyes and throat. "Stay awake," I said. "I'm awake," he mumbled. He tried to stand and fell again. I screamed his name through thunder. I pulled him toward the house. His body was heavy, my arms weak. "Don't you dare die on me," I cried. He said, "You're strong, Lila." "No, I'm angry," I said. "That works too," he whispered. The house door slammed behind us. I dropped him near the fire. Martha ran from the back room. "Sweet Lord." "What happened?" she shouted. "Barn's gone," I gasped. "He's bleeding again." She grabbed cloth and boiling water. "Hold pressure," she said. Ethan's eyes fluttered. "Don't go," I said. "I'm not," he whispered. I pressed on his wound, shaking. He grunted but didn't push me away. Blood soaked the rag. "More water," I said. Martha handed me another cloth. Hours passed. The storm raged outside. Lightning flashed through the window. Ethan drifted in and out of sleep. "Stay with me," I said each time. He whispered, "I'm here." I cried silently, my tears mixing with rain. At one point, he opened his eyes. "Lila," he said weakly. "Yes?" I leaned close. "If I don't make it," I cut him off. "Don't say that." He smiled faintly. "Then I won't." I squeezed his hand tight. "You'll live." "You owe me," he chuckled, then coughed. "Guess I do." Martha brought soup and blankets. I fed him small sips. He whispered, "You should rest." I said, "Not until you're safe." The wind hit the walls again. "Storm's angry tonight," Martha muttered. "It can scream all at once," I said. "I'm not losing him." She nodded and left me alone. I sat beside him till dawn. The fire burned low, light soft and gold. His breathing slowed but stayed steady. I brushed hair from his face. His skin felt warm again. I whispered, "You foolish man." When the first sunlight came, the storm finally stopped. The land outside was broken. The barn lay half burned, black and twisted. But the sky turned pink and calm. I turned back to Ethan. He opened his eyes and smiled faintly. "Morning," he said, voice dry. "Morning," I said, tears spilling again. He looked around, confused. "I didn't die?" "Not yet," I said, laughing. He chuckled weakly. "Guess I owe you more than I thought." I smiled through tears. "You can start by not leaving me too." He reached for my hand. His fingers were rough but gentle. "I won't," he said softly. The fire cracked behind us. Light touched his face. Outside, the horses neighed faintly. The smell of wet earth filled the room. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you, God. You heard me." He said, "What did you say?" I smiled. "Nothing. Just a promise kept." He sighed and leaned back. "We'll rebuild," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "Together." I sat beside him, watching dawn rise. The storm had taken much, but it left one thing alive. The love I didn't expect, and the man who refused to die. The morning sun felt warm on my face. I stood near the fence, holding the saddle rope. Ethan smiled from a few feet away. "Still scared of the horse?" he asked. I said, "Maybe a little." "It remembers I fell," he laughed softly. "Then it remembers wrong. You never gave up." He stepped closer and placed my hand on the saddle. "Breathe," he said. "Horses feel your fear," I whispered. "Then this one must be terrified." He chuckled. "No, Lila, it knows your heart." I looked at him. "And what does my heart say?" He said, "That you're ready to ride again." The horse snorted. Dust rose in the air. Ethan helped me mount. His hand lingered on mine. The touch felt steady, warm, real. "Don't let go too soon," I said. He grinned. I never did. We rode slowly across the open field. The wind smelled of grass and rain. Ethan pointed to the hills. That's where I'll build the new barn. I said, you already have enough work. He shook his head. It's not for work. It's for peace, I smiled. You always talk like that now. He said, that's your fault. You made me start thinking. The horse's hooves beat soft against the dirt. I asked, do you ever miss the old life? He said, the fighting? The running? No. I said, then what do you miss? He looked down. My brother. Even after what he did. I said, you forgave him. He nodded. And I forgave myself too. I whispered, that's harder to do. He said, you helped me find the courage. We stopped by the stream that ran through the field. The water glittered under the sun. Ethan said, I used to come here when I was lost. I asked, and now? He smiled. Now I come here when I'm found. I felt my chest tighten. You always say the right thing. He said, no, I just say what you make me feel. I slid down from the saddle and crouched by the stream. The cold water ran over my fingers. Ethan joined me, hat pushed back, eyes soft. He said, you've changed this place, Lila. I said, the ranch healed itself. He shook his head. No, you brought hope back. I laughed quietly. Hope's a stubborn thing. He said, so are you. The wind picked up a bit of dust. I said, I want to visit my mother today. Ethan nodded. I'll come with you. I said, no, I need to go alone. He looked unsure but didn't argue. He said, I'll be here when you return. I smiled. I know, the small graveyard sat behind the old oak. I knelt by my mother's grave, brushing off the dirt. The stone was simple, just her name and date. I whispered, Mama, the ranch stands again. The horses run. The roof doesn't leak. And there's laughter now, his and mine. I found someone who stayed. Tears slid down my cheeks, soft and warm. I said, you'd like him, Mama. He's stubborn but kind. He listens more than he speaks. He doesn't fix me. He just holds me. And he lets me be myself. A gust of wind moved through the trees. I felt like she was answering, just quiet and sure. I'm not the widow's daughter anymore, I said. I'm just Lila, I'm me. I stayed there until the light began to fade. When I turned, Ethan waited at the gate. He didn't speak. He just opened his arms. I walked to him step by step. He wrapped me close, his breath warm on my hair. I thought you'd gone far, he whispered. I never go far from home, I said. He kissed the top of my head. Then neither will I. We rode back together as night fell. The sky burned orange, fading into blue. Cows grazed near the fence line. The air smelled of hay and firelight. Martha waved from the porch. She shouted, You both hungry? Ethan laughed. Always, I said. Save me some bread this time. She called back. Not if he gets there first. Inside, the fire crackled low. I poured coffee while Ethan mended his glove. He said, You still don't rest enough. I said, And you talk too much for a cowboy. He grinned. You like my talking? I shrugged. Maybe a little, he said. Then you'll like what I'm about to say. I looked up. Oh, what now? He set the glove down. Marry me, Lila. The room fell silent. Even the fire paused. I blinked. You're serious? He nodded. Dead serious, I said. We already share everything. He said, Then share my name too. I laughed softly. That's the worst proposal I ever heard. He leaned closer. Good. Then you'll never forget it. I felt my heartbeat slow and steady. I said, You sure you want me? He said, You're all I ever wanted. I whispered, I'm not perfect, Ethan. He said, Neither am I. That's why it works. I smiled through tears. Then yes. He stood, pulled me up, and kissed me gently. For once, I didn't flinch from joy. Later, we sat on the porch watching the stars. He said, Hey, tomorrow we ride to town. I asked, Wait, for what? He said, For papers, rings, and maybe pie. I laughed. Pie first, he said. Always pie first. The wind moved softly through the grass. Crickets sang. The world felt still, Ethan said. You healed me, Lila. I whispered, Now it's your turn. He asked, To heal you? I said no, to love me right. He smiled. That I can do. We sat there till the moon rose high. I leaned on his shoulder and closed my eyes. The smell of smoke and rain mixed in the air. I felt safe. I felt new. Tomorrow waited like an open road, and this time I wasn't afraid to ride it. I woke before sunrise. The air felt cool and still. The barn waited, old wood shining in soft light. My hands trembled as I held a new letter. Ethan still slept beside the fire, breathing slow. I smiled and whispered, "It's time again." He opened one eye and said, "Time for what?" I said, "For a letter no one asked for." He chuckled. "You and your paper hearts." I said, "They saved me once. Maybe they'll save another." He reached out, touched my cheek and said, "Then write it." I sat on the step with my old notebook. The pages smelled of dust and time. The pen scratched softly, like wind over dry grass. I wrote, "To whoever comes after me." The ink spread in small, shaking lines. I said aloud, "To the one who hurts, listen. You can start again. You can live even if love left you. You can build home from ashes." Ethan's voice came from behind me. "You sound like a preacher," he teased. I laughed. "No, I sound like a woman who survived," he said. "Then tell them how you did." I nodded. "Maybe I will," I wrote again. I lost people I thought I couldn't live without. I carried pain like it was my name. But one day, I met someone who didn't fix me. He just stood beside me until I fixed myself. He said love wasn't a promise, it was work. He said mercy grows in broken soil. Ethan leaned against the door, smiling. "Did I say that?" he asked. I said, "You said half. I made it sound better." He laughed, rubbing his beard. Figures, the barn filled with light. Dust danced in air. A soft breeze touched my hair and the paper. Ethan walked closer. "You ever wonder who'll find it?" I said, "Maybe someone like I was once." He said, "Lost?" I said, "Yes, lost, tired, still trying to breathe." He nodded slowly. "Then it'll help them." I wrote more, fast this time. "Don't run from your pain. It will chase you anyway. Stop and face it, even if it burns. Love will find you when you stop hiding. Forgive yourself first. The rest will follow." Ethan read over my shoulder. "You sure you're not writing a sermon?" I smiled. "You said love made preachers out of fools," he said. "Then I guess I'm the fool you married," I said. "And I'm the sinner who said yes." We both laughed until I wiped tears away. He whispered, "Write one last line." I said, "What should it be?" He said, "Write the truth." So I wrote, "Love is worth the pain." The pen stopped. The words looked final. Ethan kissed the top of my head. "You done?" he asked. I said, "Almost." He handed me a small nail and his hammer. "Hide it like you did the first one." I smiled. "You remember that?" He said, "Every nail you hit crooked." We walked to the far wall of the barn. The morning light turned gold on the wood. I lifted a plank and slid the folded letter inside. The paper made a soft sound like goodbye. Ethan held my hand steady while I tapped the nail. When it was done, we stood back and looked. He said, "Think someone will ever find it?" I said, "Someday. When they need it most." He nodded. "Then you did your part," I whispered. We both did. We walked outside together. The sun climbed higher over the hills. Wind moved through the dry grass like waves. Ethan said, "You ever think of leaving Dust Creek?" I said, "No. This is home now." He smiled. "Home, huh? Took you long enough to say that." I said, "I had to earn it first." We reached the porch. The smell of bread and coffee drifted out. I sat on the steps, watching him fix the fence. He said, "That line post's older than me." I said, "Then it's still younger than your jokes." He laughed, that deep cowboy laugh I loved. After breakfast, I walked down to the creek. The water ran clear, full from last night's rain. I touched the surface and felt it cold and kind. I said, "Ma, if you can hear me, I kept my promise. I didn't give up." I stayed. A small bird landed near my boots. It chirped once, then flew toward the barn. I whispered, "Go tell her. She'll know." When I returned, Ethan was sitting with his guitar. He strummed a slow tune, voice low and rough. He said, "Remember this song?" I said, "You sang it the night you almost died." He said, "Then it's lucky." I sat beside him and hummed along. He stopped and looked at me. "You think love changes when we get old?" I said, "No, it just gets quieter." He said, "Good." I like quiet love. I said, me too. The sky turned pale blue. Children from the neighbor ranch rode past, waving. I waved back, smiling. Ethan said, you see that? Whole town's different now. I said, maybe we helped it heal. He said, you sure healed me. I said, and you taught me to stay. Later, I watched the sunset from the porch swing. Ethan leaned close, whispering, still thinking? I said, always. He said, what about? I said, about the next heart that finds that letter. He smiled. Then they'll know love wins. I said, yes, it always does. The wind rose again, carrying dust and light. It filled the yard, golden and soft. Ethan's arm went around me. I rested my head against his shoulder. He said, what does it say again? I whispered, you can start again. He nodded. That's all anyone needs to hear. We stayed like that until stars came out. The barn stood quiet, holding our secret, and somewhere inside its wall, a letter waited. For the next heart brave enough to read it.